Vienna, March 1897. The envelope, too fine for its purpose, arrived misdirected, addressed not to Her Imperial Highness Princess Sophia Augusta but to her lady-in-waiting, Helena Rothwell. Pearly white and edged in gold leaf, it bore the unmistakable seal of the House of Aschenberg. Helena stared at her name inked across the front in an elegant, unfamiliar hand. A man's hand, she determined, strong yet refined. "What have you there, Helena?" Princess Sophia asked, glancing up from her embroidery. At 20, the princess was the picture of Viennese aristocracy, with her chestnut hair arranged in elaborate coils and her posture impeccable even in private quarters. "A letter, Your Highness. Though I believe there has been some mistake." Helena held it up to the afternoon light filtering through the palace windows. Sophia set down her needlework. "From whom?" "The seal belongs to the Aschenbergs." Helena turned the envelope to display the wax impression. "But it is addressed to me." The princess's eyebrows arched delicately. "How peculiar. Perhaps Baron Aschenberg has a matter to discuss regarding my schedule?" "Open it, then." Helena broke the seal carefully, unfolded the single sheet of cream stationery, and began to read. Her eyes widened progressively, color blooming across her cheeks. "Well?" Sophia prodded. "What does it say?" Helena cleared her throat. "My dearest princess," she began, her voice faltering. "I write to you against all reason, against all propriety, against the counsel of my own sensible nature. Since our meeting at the Emperor's winter ball, I have thought of little else but the gentle curve of your smile." She trailed off, unable to continue. "Helena." The princess rose and crossed the room, her silk skirts rustling against the parquet floor. "Are you quite all right?" "Your Highness, I believe this letter was meant for you," Helena managed, extending the paper. "It is a personal correspondence." Sophia snatched it, scanning the page quickly. "Good heavens," she murmured, a small smile playing at her lips. "It appears Count Robert Aschenberg has developed an attachment. How forward of him." She handed the letter back to Helena. "But why would he address it to you?" Helena examined the envelope again. "I believe the error lies with whomever delivered it, Your Highness. The envelope bears my name, but the contents—" She hesitated. "The contents are clearly meant for you." "Clearly," Sophia agreed, returning to her chair. After a moment's contemplation, she asked, "Did you meet the Count at the ball?" "I recall he was in attendance." Helena nodded, remembering the tall figure who had stood at the periphery of the celebration, more observer than participant. "Only briefly, Your Highness." "He requested an introduction to you." "Yes, we shared a dance." The princess tapped her finger against the arm of her chair. "He seemed reserved. I hardly expected such flowery sentiment from him." Her eye sparked with sudden mischief. "You must reply." "I beg your pardon." "Reply to him, Helena." "In my stead." "But Your Highness, that would be an innocent amusement," Sophia interrupted. "Nothing more. I have no interest in the Count's affections, but neither do I wish to discourage a member of one of Vienna's most influential families." She waved her hand dismissively. "Write something appropriate. Non-committal but not discouraging." "As you wish," Helena replied quietly, folding the letter. She slipped it into her pocket, trying to ignore the inexplicable weight it seemed to carry. That night, in her small chamber adjoining the princess's suite, Helena reread the Count's letter by candlelight. His words were earnest without being overly sentimental, educated without being pretentious. This was not the missive of a man merely pursuing a politically advantageous match. There was something genuine in his admiration that stirred Helena unexpectedly. She dipped her pen and began to write, carefully imitating the princess's distinctive penmanship. Count Aschenberg, your letter arrived safely, though by what circuitous route I cannot say. While I am unaccustomed to such direct expressions of admiration, I find your sincerity refreshing in a court where words are so often chosen for effect rather than truth. The winter ball seems a distant memory now, though spring has barely begun to show itself in the palace gardens. Perhaps when the lilacs bloom, we shall have occasion to speak again. Until then, I remain Princess Sophia Augusta Helena sealed the letter, troubled by the strange satisfaction she felt in crafting a response. Tomorrow she would entrust it to the princess's personal courier, and that would be the end of it, a small diversion in the otherwise predictable routine of court life. She extinguished her candle, unaware that she had just penned the first lines of a story far more complex than she could imagine. 2 weeks passed before another envelope arrived, this time correctly addressed to the princess but delivered discreetly to Helena's hands by a palace footman who mentioned it had come directly from an Aschenberg messenger. "Another letter from your admirer," Helena announced, presenting it to Sophia during their afternoon reading hour. The princess glanced up from her novel with mild interest. "What does the persistent count have to say now?" "I haven't opened it, Your Highness." "It is addressed to you." Sophia sighed, setting aside her book. "Very well." She broke the seal and scanned the contents, her expression revealing nothing. After a moment, she held the letter out to Helena. "It seems your reply was effective. He wishes to meet, privately." Helena accepted the letter, her pulse quickening as she read Count Aschenberg's carefully worded request for a chaperoned walk through the Schönbrunn gardens when the lilacs were in bloom, a clear reference to the response she had crafted. "Do you intend to meet him?" Helena asked, returning the letter. Sophia laughed lightly. "I have no interest in encouraging the Count, however well connected he may be. The Archduke has made his intentions toward me quite clear, and father would never approve of an Aschenberg match." She tapped the letter against her palm thoughtfully. "But I see no harm in maintaining the correspondence. You've proven quite capable of capturing my voice." "Your Highness cannot mean, I do," Sophia interjected. "Continue writing to him as me. It amuses me to think of the serious Count pouring his heart out to a phantom princess." She smiled at Helena's evident discomfort. "Consider it part of your duties, protecting me from unwanted suitors while maintaining diplomatic relations." Helena wanted to object, but years of service had taught her that the princess's whims, once established, were immovable as mountains. "As you wish," she conceded. "How shall I respond to this invitation?" "Decline, naturally, but with sufficient warmth to keep him hopeful. Mention court obligations, perhaps. You'll find the right words." Sophia returned to her novel, the matter settled in her mind. That evening, Helena composed a careful refusal that nevertheless left the door open for future correspondence. As she wrote, she found herself wondering about the man receiving these letters. What would he think if he knew his heartfelt words were being answered by a lady-in-waiting playing at being princess? She recalled Count Robert Aschenberg from the winter ball, tall and broad-shouldered, with intelligent eyes and a thoughtful manner that set him apart from the usual courtiers. He had spoken little but observed much, and when introduced to Helena had shown her the same courtesy he extended to those of higher rank. Such egalitarian manners were uncommon enough to be memorable. Helena finished her letter with a vague promise of future meetings when court duties allowed, then sealed it with the princess's personal stamp, another small deception in what was becoming an increasingly complicated game. Spring melted into summer, and the correspondence continued. Each letter from Count Aschenberg revealed more of the man behind the title, his interests in natural philosophy, his quiet commitment to improving conditions on his estates, his wry observations of court politics. Helena found herself looking forward to his letters and crafting increasingly personal responses, always with the princess's approval but increasingly with her own voice slipping through. "He writes that his mother is unwell," Helena reported one July afternoon, summarizing the Count's latest letter. "He's returning to their country estate for several weeks." Sophia found herself languidly in the summer heat. "How inconvenient for our little diversion. I suppose we'll have to find other amusements until his return." "He seems genuinely concerned for her," Helena noted, troubled by the princess's dismissive tone. "The Countess has been ailing since winter." Yes, Sophia waved her hand. "Very filial of him. You may send our condolences." She rose, adjusting her light summer dress. "Now help me prepare for the garden reception. The Archduke will be attending, and father expects me to make a favorable impression." Helena set aside the letter and moved to assist the princess, but her mind remained with the Count's words and the evident worry between his carefully composed lines. Later that night, she wrote not just condolences but a letter of genuine comfort, drawing on her own experience of losing her mother years before. She signed it with the princess's name but sealed it with her own heart. When no reply came for several weeks, Helena told herself it was for the best. The deception had gone on too long already. But she found herself watching for the Aschenberg seal whenever correspondence arrived, and feeling an irrational disappointment when it did not appear. August brought sweltering heat to Vienna and unexpected news. Count Robert Aschenberg had returned to the capital and would be attending the Emperor's summer ball with his recently recovered mother. "You'll finally have the chance to meet your devoted correspondent in person," Helena remarked as she arranged Sophia's hair for the event. The princess met her eyes in the mirror. "A complication I could do without. The Archduke has all but declared his intentions, and father is pleased with the match." She frowned slightly. "You've done too good a job, Helena. The Count's expectations will need to be managed." "Perhaps if your Highness were to speak with him directly." "No," Sophia cut her off. "Your written charm has created this situation. You will need to help resolve it." She turned to face Helena directly. "Tonight, you will accompany me as usual. When the Count approaches, you will find a way to communicate that my interests lie elsewhere without creating a scene." Helena's hand stilled. "You want me to reject him? In person?" "Gently, of course. Use your discretion." Sophia turned back to the mirror. "You've been speaking for me for months. Surely you can manage one more conversation." The ballroom of Schönbrunn Palace glittered with chandeliers and the jewels of Europe's aristocracy. Helena stood at her customary position near the princess, observing the elaborate social dance of the imperial court. Her eyes kept drifting to the entrance, anticipating the Count's arrival with a mixture of dread and inexplicable eagerness. When he finally appeared, Helena almost failed to recognize him. Gone was the reserved observer from the winter ball. In his place stood a commanding figure whose quiet confidence drew attention without seeking it. The Countess Aschenberg leaned on his arm, still bearing signs of her illness but resplendent in midnight blue silk. Helena watched as they made their way through the required greetings, the Count's eyes scanning the room until they found Princess Sophia. Something in his expression, a softening, a moment of genuine emotion, made Helena's chest tighten uncomfortably. "He's here," she murmured to Sophia, who was engaged in animated conversation with the Archduke. The princess glanced up, noting the Count's approach. "Perfect timing," she whispered back. "The Archduke is just about to request a private word on the terrace. Intercept the Count and remember what I said." Before Helena could respond, Sophia had gracefully extracted herself from the group, allowing the Archduke to guide her toward the open terrace doors. Helena took a steadying breath and stepped forward, placing herself in Count Aschenberg's path. "Lady Rothwell," he greeted her with evident recognition, bowing slightly. "A pleasure to see you again." "Count Aschenberg," Helena curtsied. "How lovely to see you return to court. And the Countess, you are looking well, my lady." The older woman smiled warmly. "Much improved, thank you. The country air worked wonders." She glanced knowingly between her son and Helena. "Robert, perhaps you might fetch me a glass of champagne while I rest my legs for a moment." "Of course, mother." He offered Helena a tentative smile. "If you'll excuse me." As he moved away, the Countess Aschenberg leaned closer to Helena. "My son speaks very highly of the princess's lady-in-waiting," she said quietly. "He mentioned your kindness during our introduction at the winter ball." Helena felt her cheeks warm. "The Count is generous with his praise." "He is honest with it," the Countess corrected, her shrewd eyes assessing Helena. "A quality he shares with his father, God rest his soul." Before Helena could respond, Count Aschenberg returned with 2 glasses of champagne. He presented one to his mother and then turned to Helena. "I had hoped to pay my respects to Her Imperial Highness," he said, his eyes moving to where Sophia had been standing. "Has she retired already?" The moment had come. Helena took a breath. Her Highness requested a few moments of privacy with the Archduke, she explained, watching his face carefully. She asked me to convey her greetings and to apologize for her absence. Something flickered in his expression, confusion, perhaps disappointment, but he masked it quickly. I see, he said evenly. Then perhaps you might do me the honor of a dance, Lady Rothwell? Unless your duties require you elsewhere. The request surprised her. That would be lovely, Count Aschenberg. The Countess smiled approvingly as her son led Helena to the dance floor. As they took their positions for the quadrille, Helena noticed that his hand trembled slightly against hers. Your letters gave no indication that the princess's affections might lie with the Archduke, he said quietly as they moved through the first figures of the dance. Helena nearly missed a step. My letters. His expression remained neutral, but his eyes studied her intently. The responses to my correspondence, he clarified. They pass through your hands, do they not? Yes, she answered carefully, unsure how much to reveal. As Her Highness's lady-in-waiting, I assist with her personal correspondence. I see. The dance separated them briefly before bringing them back together. When it did, he continued, it was your handwriting on the envelopes. I recognized it from the letter of introduction you sent when requesting the tour of our botanical gardens for the princess last year. Helena felt heat rise to her face. Count Aschenberg, please, he interrupted gently, call me Robert, at least during this dance. Formality seems unnecessary between us. The intimacy of his request caught her off guard. I'm not sure what you mean. His hand pressed slightly firmer against hers as they turned. I think you understand perfectly well, Helena, he said, using her given name with deliberate care. The question is whether you will acknowledge it. The music swelled around them, covering their conversation from curious ears. Helena looked up into his face, earnest, intelligent, waiting for a truth she wasn't authorized to give. The princess has been very busy with court obligations, she said finally, choosing her words with precision. The Archduke's attention has been significant in recent weeks. That doesn't answer the question I'm actually asking, he replied, his voice low. The dance ended before she could respond, leaving them standing amid couples preparing for the next set. Robert bowed formally. Thank you for the dance, Lady Rothwell. Would you care to continue our conversation somewhere less crowded? The gallery is usually quiet during these events. Helena knew she should refuse. Her duty was to the princess, and Sophia's instructions had been clear, manage the count's expectations and redirect his attention. But something in his steady gaze made her nod her agreement. The portrait gallery extended in a long, hushed corridor away from the ballroom's noise. Couples occasionally strolled through, admiring the ancestral paintings of the Habsburg line, but at this hour most guests were focused on the dancing and imperial refreshments. They walked in silence until they reached a window alcove partly hidden by heavy velvet curtains. Robert gestured for Helena to sit on the cushioned window seat, then took his position a respectful distance beside her. I believe I understand what has happened, he said without preamble. The princess has been having you respond to my letters, hasn't she? Helena looked down at her hands. Your Excellency, Robert, he corrected gently. Robert, she conceded, his name unfamiliar on her tongue. I cannot speak of the princess's private matters. He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. I'm not asking for court secrets, Helena. I'm asking for honesty between us. He hesitated, then added more softly, the person who wrote those letters, who spoke of childhood memories in the country, who understood my concerns for my estates, who offered such wisdom about my mother's illness, that person was you, wasn't it? The direct question hung in the air between them. Helena knew that confirming his suspicion would be a betrayal of the princess's trust, but denying it felt like a deeper betrayal of something she couldn't yet name. Parts of the correspondence were guided by my own experiences, she admitted finally. The princess allowed me considerable freedom in responding to your letters. Allowed you? His eyebrow raised. Or instructed you? Helena remained silent, her loyalty to Sophia warring with the urge to be honest with this man whose words had become so important to her over the past months. Robert leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. The first letter, the one that started all this, it was addressed to you, wasn't it? Not a mistake at all. Her head jerked up in surprise. What do you mean? I mean, he said deliberately, that I addressed that letter to Helena Rothwell, not to Princess Sophia Augusta. He watched her face carefully as understanding dawned. I met you both at the winter ball. It was you who captured my attention, Helena. Your kindness to my mother, your quiet intelligence, the way you observed everything without judgment, those were the qualities I admired. Helena stared at him in disbelief. But the letter clearly addressed the princess. It spoke of her smile, of dancing with her, it spoke of a gentle smile and a conversation at the emperor's winter ball, he corrected. We shared both, if you recall. You showed me your sketches of the palace gardens and spoke of your work cataloguing the imperial botanical collection. The memory flooded back of their brief conversation as she had waited for the princess to conclude a dance, his genuine interest in her botanical illustrations, the unexpected ease between them. But why would you write to me, as she asked, confusion evident in her voice. I'm just a lady in waiting. Just? He smiled slightly. Helena, you are the daughter of the late Professor Rothwell, whose work on botanical classification is used throughout Europe. You are educated, accomplished, and possess a rare kindness that has nothing to do with court manners. His expression grew more serious. And you are the woman whose words have given me comfort and companionship through months of my mother's illness. I didn't know, she whispered. I thought, we all assumed, the letter was misdirected. And so began our unusual correspondence. Robert's eyes held hers steadily. I wondered at the change in tone after that first response, the formality, the royals but I convinced myself it was court protocol asserting itself. I continued writing because even through that veil, something of your true self shone through. Helena felt as though the ground beneath her had shifted. Every letter, every careful response, every moment spent crafting words she believed were for the princess, all of it transformed by this revelation. The princess cannot know of this, she said finally, the implications becoming clear. She believes you are pursuing her favor. A misunderstanding I would gladly clarify, Robert replied, if given the opportunity. No, Helena shook her head firmly. Her Imperial Highness must never know that she has been participating in such a deception. It would damage her pride and potentially her standing at court. Robert studied her face. You protect her, even now. It is my duty. And beyond that, she has been kind to me in her way. Helena rose from the window seat, suddenly aware of how long they had been absent from the ballroom. We should return before we are missed. Robert stood but made no move to leave. What happens now, Helena? Do we pretend this conversation never occurred? Do I continue writing letters to a princess who doesn't read them, to receive responses from a woman who can never acknowledge her own words? Put so plainly, the absurdity of the situation was impossible to ignore. Helena felt a hysterical laugh building in her throat and suppressed it with effort. I don't know, she admitted. This is unprecedented in my experience. He took a step closer, careful to maintain propriety but near enough that she could see the earnestness in his eyes. Then perhaps we should establish new precedent. Write to me, Helena, as yourself. No more pretense. And if your letters are intercepted? If questions are raised about why a count is corresponding with a lady in waiting, then we will face those questions honestly. He smiled slightly. I am, after all, known for my unconventional interests. Few would be surprised to learn that I've struck up a correspondence with the daughter of Professor Rothwell regarding botanical matters. Helena considered this possibility. A proper, academic correspondence would raise few eyebrows. It might even enhance her standing as the princess's scientific advisor. I could write to you about the Imperial Gardens, she said slowly. The new specimens from the Americas would certainly be of interest to someone with your botanical collection. Precisely, Robert agreed, his eyes warming. And if our letters occasionally stray to more personal matters, well, who would think to question it? The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Helena felt a flutter of something dangerously close to hope. I should still discuss this with the princess, she cautioned. To continue any correspondence without her knowledge would be honest, he supplied. It would be honest, Helena. The deception was in pretending the letters were ever for her. Before she could respond, voices approached the gallery, other guests seeking a moment's respite from the ballroom. Robert offered his arm formally. Shall we rejoin the celebration, Lady Rothwell? She placed her hand lightly on his sleeve, feeling the solid warmth beneath the formal evening attire. Yes, Count Aschenberg. I believe we should. As they walked back toward the music and light, Helena knew that something fundamental had changed, not just in her understanding of the letters, but in her perception of her own place in this glittering, hierarchical world. For the first time since coming to court, she had been seen not as an extension of the princess but as herself. The realization was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. Autumn painted Vienna in rich golds and crimsons. In the princess's private sitting room, Helena sorted through the morning's correspondence while Sophia reviewed invitations for the coming social season. Another letter from your botanical count, Sophia noted, indicating an envelope bearing the Aschenberg seal. Has he sent those American seeds you requested? Helena accepted the letter with carefully controlled eagerness. I hope so, Your Highness. The Imperial Gardener is most anxious to add them to the collection. After their conversation at the summer ball, Helena had explained to the princess that Count Aschenberg had expressed interest in collaborating on botanical studies, having recognized Helena as Professor Rothwell's daughter. Sophia, relieved that the Count's romantic attention had apparently been redirected, gave her blessing to the correspondence with amused indulgence. What the princess didn't know, what no one at court knew, was that for every proper letter about plant specimens and scientific observations, there were other messages hidden between the pages or written in the margins of botanical sketches. These private communications had grown increasingly personal over the weeks, revealing a deepening connection that Helena scarcely dared name. You may read it now if you wish, Sophia said magnanimously. I'm sure you're eager to know if your precious seeds have arrived. Thank you, Your Highness. Helena broke the seal and unfolded the letter, her eyes quickly finding the formal text about botanical exchanges. But it was the small note tucked into the fold of a detailed drawing that made her heart quicken. Helena, mother has asked that I extend an invitation for you to visit our conservatory when the princess next grants you leave. She claims it is to show you the orchid collection, but I suspect she simply wishes to know better the woman who has brought such light to her son's life through mere words on paper. Say you'll come. The autumn gardens have a different beauty than summer's riotous display, more contemplative and complex, rather like the turn our correspondence has taken these past weeks. Until then, I remain yours in earnest. Robert. Helena tucked the note quickly into her sleeve, returning her attention to the official letter. The Count has indeed procured the seeds, Your Highness. He invites me to view the Aschenberg Conservatory when my duties permit. Sophia glanced up with mild interest. Their conservatory is said to be impressive. You should accept, the royal collection would benefit from any new specimens you might acquire. She returned to her invitations. You may go when we return from Baden. The waters always leave me feeling sufficiently restored that I can manage a few days without your constant attendance. You are most generous, Your Highness. Helena kept her voice level despite the surge of anticipation she felt at the prospect of seeing Robert in person after months of their clandestine correspondence. Yes, well, Sophia replied absently, your botanical interests have proven useful to the court. It seems only fair to indulge them occasionally. She set aside her papers and fixed Helena with a more direct look. Though I must say, I never expected Count Aschenberg to become so passionate about horticulture. He seemed rather more concerned with politics when I met him. Helena concentrated on organizing the remaining letters. I believe his estates include significant agricultural lands, Your Highness. Perhaps his interest is practical as well as scientific. Perhaps. The princess's tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. In any case, it's a harmless enough pastime, and far better than his previous fixation. She smiled slightly. You've done me a service by diverting him, Helena. The Archduke would not have appreciated the competition, however misguided. The casual cruelty of the remark stung more than it should have. Helena had long grown accustomed to the princess's dismissive attitude toward those she considered beneath her notice, but hearing Robert described as a mere annoyance to be managed felt like a personal affront. "I'm sure the Count's scientific interests are genuine, Your Highness," she said carefully. "His family has maintained one of Vienna's finest botanical collections for generations." "Yes, yes," Sophia waved her hand dismissively. "Very commendable. Now, help me decide which of these invitations to accept. The Archduke insists we attend the opera gala, but I find Herr Wagner so tediously bombastic." Helena slipped back into her role as confidant and advisor, but the note pressed against her wrist beneath her sleeve seemed to burn with promise, a small, secret flame in the cool formality of the imperial palace. The Aschenberg estate lay just beyond Vienna's outskirts, close enough to the capital to maintain court connections but sufficiently removed to create a world of its own. Helena's carriage passed through wrought iron gates and followed a winding drive lined with ancient linden trees shedding their golden leaves in the October breeze. She smoothed her dress nervously, a new one, commissioned with more care than she usually devoted to her wardrobe. The deep burgundy wool was trimmed with black velvet, elegant enough for a formal visit but practical enough to justify the expense to herself. The carriage came to a stop before an imposing stone manor house. Helena had barely descended when the heavy oak doors opened and Robert emerged, followed more slowly by his mother. He looked different here, more relaxed, his formal court attire replaced by the practical clothing of a country gentleman, though no less distinguished for it. "Lady Rothwell," he greeted her with a bow that couldn't quite conceal his evident pleasure. "Welcome to Aschenberg." "Count Aschenberg, Countess," Helena curtsied formally, aware of the servants nearby. "Thank you for your kind invitation." The Countess came forward, offering her hand. "My dear, we are delighted you could come. Robert has spoken of little else since your correspondence began." There was a knowing warmth in the older woman's eyes that suggested she understood more than had been explicitly shared with her. "Mother," Robert admonished gently, though without real censure. "Oh, don't mother me, Robert," she replied good-naturedly. "Lady Rothwell knows perfectly well that botanical specimens alone don't inspire such anticipation in a man." She turned back to Helena. "Come inside, my dear. The autumn air has a bite to it today." The interior of the manor was a revelation, not in its grandeur, though it was certainly impressive, but in its evident character. Unlike the rigid formality of the imperial palace, Aschenberg House felt genuinely inhabited. Bookshelves lined the walls, paintings hung at heights to be appreciated rather than to impress, and comfortable furniture invited actual use rather than mere admiration. "You must be tired after your journey," the Countess said, leading Helena to a sitting room where a fire blazed cheerfully. "Tea will be served shortly, and then Robert can show you the conservatory if you wish." "That would be lovely," Helena replied, settling into the offered chair. "Her Imperial Highness sends her regards and thanks you for allowing me to visit your famous collection." "How kind of the princess," the Countess said with perfect diplomacy. "I understand she has been most supportive of your scientific endeavors." "Yes, Her Highness has always encouraged my botanical studies," Helena confirmed. It wasn't entirely untrue. Sophia did value Helena's knowledge, particularly when it could be displayed to impress foreign dignitaries with the breadth of the imperial household's accomplishments. Tea arrived, served by an elderly butler who greeted Helena with dignified courtesy. As they discussed polite generalities about court life and the approaching winter season, Helena gradually relaxed. The Countess had a gift for making guests feel welcome, and Robert's presence, attentive but not overbearing, created an atmosphere of easy companionship unlike anything Helena had experienced in years. "Now," the Countess announced after they had finished their tea, "I'm sure you young people are eager to discuss your botanical interests without an old woman's interference. Robert, why don't you show Lady Rothwell the conservatory? I'll join you for dinner at 7. Robert rose and offered his arm to Helena. "Mother exaggerates her interference but underestimates her knowledge," he said affectionately. "She knows more about orchids than I ever will." The Countess smiled. "Off with you both. Lady Rothwell didn't travel all this way to hear us exchange compliments." Helena placed her hand on Robert's arm, acutely aware of the first time they had touched since the summer ball. He led her through the manor to a glass-walled extension at the rear of the building, a magnificent conservatory filled with plants from around the world, their rich scents mingling in the humid air. "This is extraordinary," Helena breathed, taking in the careful organization of species. "Your collection rivals the imperial greenhouses." "High praise from the princess's botanical advisor," Robert replied with a smile. "Though I suspect the imperial collection has more exotic specimens." "Perhaps," she conceded, "but yours shows more careful curation. Someone has arranged these plants with genuine understanding of their needs." "That would be my father's legacy," Robert explained, guiding her along a stone path that wound through the greenery. "And now mine, I suppose. Though I've had considerable help from our head gardener since father passed." They walked in companionable silence for a few minutes, admiring particularly notable specimens. When they reached a secluded corner filled with orchids, Robert slowed his pace. "Helena," he said quietly, "I hope you know how much your letters have meant to me." She glanced up at him, struck by the earnestness in his expression. "And yours to me," she replied. "They've been a window to a world outside palace routine." "Is it very difficult?" "Your position, I mean." Helena considered the question carefully. "Not difficult in the ways most would imagine. I have comfort, security, and status of a sort." She touched a delicate orchid bloom without quite meeting his eyes. "But there are other difficulties, ones less easily explained." "Try," he encouraged gently. "Please." She took a breath. "It's a life of perpetual in-betweenness," she said finally. "Too educated for a servant, yet never quite a member of the aristocracy. Always in rooms where history is made, but never making any of my own." She smiled ruefully. "I sound ungrateful." "No," he said quickly. "You sound honest. It's what I've always valued in your letters." Helena felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "Even when they were signed with someone else's name." "Especially then," he replied, his voice dropping lower. "Because despite the deception, something true always shone through. Your compassion. Your intelligence. Your quiet courage." They had stopped walking, standing now amid the orchids with only the gentle sound of water trickling in a nearby fountain. Helena was acutely conscious of their isolation, of the impropriety of being alone with him despite the Countess's tacit approval. "Robert," she began hesitantly, "what are we doing? This correspondence, this visit, what purpose does it serve? I am still the princess's lady-in-waiting. You are still Count Aschenberg. These facts cannot change." He turned to face her directly, though he maintained a respectful distance. "Facts can't change, but circumstances can," he said with quiet determination. "Helena, I've spent my life fulfilling obligations, to my family, to our estates, to our position in society. I've never asked for anything that wasn't already allotted to me by birth or duty." His gaze held hers steadily. "Until now." "What are you asking for?" she whispered, though she feared she already knew. "A chance," he answered simply. "Permission to court you properly, openly. To see if what we've begun in letters might flourish in life." The magnitude of what he was suggesting, the potential scandal, the certain disapproval from both their circles, should have terrified her. Instead, Helena felt a curious calm, as if some part of her had been waiting for precisely this moment. "It would not be easy," she said, thinking aloud. "The court would talk. The princess might dismiss me. Your peers would question your judgment." "Let them," Robert replied with unexpected fierceness. "I've watched my mother nearly die this year, Helena. It changes one's perspective on what matters." He took her hand gently. "I know what society expects of me. I know what I'm risking. The question is whether you believe it might be worth that risk." Helena looked down at their joined hands, hers smaller but equally capable, equally marked by years of work, albeit of a different kind. "I can't answer that yet," she admitted. "This is overwhelming." He nodded, accepting her honesty without disappointment. "Then let me propose something more immediate. he said. Stay for 3 days, as planned. Let us talk without the filter of paper and ink. At the end, if you wish to return to the palace and continue as we have been exchanging letters about botanical specimens with hidden notes in the margins, I will respect that choice. And if I don't wish to continue as we have been, she asked, hardly believing her own boldness. Robert's smile transformed his serious face. Then we will find a new way forward. Together. The promise in that single word, together, caught in Helena's chest like a physical thing. For a woman who had spent her life facilitating other stories while standing in the background of her own, the possibility of partnership was more seductive than any romantic declaration. 3 days, she agreed finally. Though I warn you, I'm far less eloquent in person than on paper. I find that hard to believe, he countered, releasing her hand reluctantly. But I welcome the opportunity to be proven wrong. They resumed their tour of the conservatory, the atmosphere between them charged with new awareness. Helena found herself noticing details she might have missed before, the way Robert's hands moved when explaining his father's hybridization techniques, the quiet authority he showed when addressing the gardeners they encountered, the genuine interest he took in her observations about the collection. By the time they returned to the house for dinner, Helena understood that the next 3 days would irrevocably alter the course of her carefully managed life. The knowledge should have terrified her. Instead, she felt more alive than she had in years. The following morning found Helena walking the grounds with the Countess while Robert attended to estate business. The older woman had suggested fresh air would benefit them both, though Helena suspected she had other motives for arranging this private conversation. My husband proposed to me in this very garden, the Countess remarked as they followed a path through what had once been a formal rose garden, now golden with autumn foliage. My family thought it a poor match. His title was impressive, but the estates were struggling after his father's mismanagement. Helena maintained a diplomatic silence, unsure how to respond to this unexpected confidence. I was meant to marry a duke's son, the Countess continued. A suitable match arranged by my parents. But then I met Franz Aschenberg at a hunting party, and within a month all those careful plans lay in ruins. She smiled at the memory. My mother didn't speak to me for a year after we married. That must have been difficult, Helena ventured. It was the easiest difficult choice I ever made. The Countess stopped walking and turned to face Helena directly. Do you understand what I'm telling you, my dear? Helena met the older woman's gaze steadily. I believe so, Countess. But my situation is different from yours. I have no family fortune, no aristocratic connections to offset the disparity in our positions. You have something far more valuable, the Countess replied. You have exactly the mind and heart my son needs. She patted Helena's hand. Robert is not like other men of his station. The title sits uncomfortably on him sometimes, all the obligations with none of the frivolous privileges his peers enjoy. He needs a partner, not an ornament. Even if what you say is true, Helena said carefully, there would be consequences. The princess has been kind to me in her way, but she would see this as a betrayal. I would lose my position, my security, and gain what in return, the Countess asked gently. That is the calculation you must make, my dear. No one else can make it for you. They resumed walking, the Countess kindly steering the conversation to less fraught topics. But her words stayed with Helena throughout the day, echoing in her mind as she joined Robert for an afternoon ride through the estate's woodlands and later as they sat in the library discussing books they had both loved. By the time she retired to her guest chamber that night, Helena felt simultaneously more certain and more conflicted than ever. The easy companionship she shared with Robert had only deepened in person. Their conversations ranged from philosophy to politics to personal memories, revealing a compatibility that seemed almost too perfect to trust. Yet the practical obstacles remained. Returning to Vienna would mean facing the princess, whose ego would not tolerate the knowledge that her lady-in-waiting had captured the attention once presumed to be hers. Even if Sophia could be convinced to give her blessing, the wider court would view the match with suspicion at best, contempt at worst. Helena sat at the small writing desk by the window, staring out at the moon-silvered gardens. On impulse, she took out paper and pen and began to write, not to Robert, though he was just down the hall, but to herself. She needed to see her thoughts in her own hand, to make tangible the choice that lay before her. Asterisk I have spent my life in service to others' stories asterisk she wrote. Asterisk first as my father's assistant, recording his observations and organizing his notes. Then as the princess's shadow, anticipating her needs and facilitating her desires. Always the keeper of others' narratives, never the author of my own. Asterisk asterisk what would it mean to choose differently? To step forward into a life not prescribed by duty or circumstance but selected for its own sake, asterisk. Asterisk I would lose much, security, familiarity, the identity I have built around my service. But what might I gain? Partnership? Respect. The chance to use my mind and heart in equal measure. Asterisk asterisk is it selfish to want these things? Or is it selfish to deny them when they are offered, out of fear or false humility? Asterisk she set down her pen, no closer to a decision but somehow clearer about what was truly at stake. This wasn't merely about romantic attachment or social advancement. It was about authorship of her own life. Sleep came fitfully that night, her dreams filled with palace corridors that stretched endlessly and gardens that transformed from the rigid patterns of Schönbrunn to the wilder beauty of Aschenberg and back again. The final day of her visit dawned bright and clear. Helena dressed with particular care, aware that by sunset she would need to have reached a decision. The princess expected her return the following morning, in time to assist with preparations for the diplomatic reception planned for the end of the week. She found Robert in the breakfast room, reading correspondence while he waited for her to join him. He rose when she entered, his face lighting with a smile that made her heart contract painfully. "Good morning," he greeted her. "I hope you slept well." "Well enough," she replied, accepting the cup of coffee he poured for her. "Your mother won't be joining us. She sends her apologies. A headache, she claims, though I suspect it's a diplomatic one." His eyes met hers over the rim of his cup. "She has a remarkable talent for knowing when to be absent." Helena felt heat rise to her cheeks. "A thoughtful woman, your mother." "Extremely." Robert set aside his letters. "I thought we might visit the village today, if you're amenable. The local church has some interesting historical features, and there's a small but surprisingly good bookshop." The suggestion surprised her. She had expected him to keep her at the estate, away from curious eyes, on this final day. "You wish to be seen with me in the village?" "I wish to be seen with you everywhere," he replied simply. "But the village seems a manageable first step." The implication was clear. This would be a test of sorts, a glimpse of what public association with him might entail. Helena nodded slowly. "Yes, I'd like that very much." The village of Aschenberg nestled in the valley below the estate, a picturesque collection of stone buildings around a small square. Their arrival in the Count's carriage drew inevitable notice, but Robert's easy greetings to the villagers they encountered spoke of long familiarity and mutual respect. Count Robert, called a grey-haired woman arranging flowers outside a small shop. "We didn't expect you back from Vienna so soon." "Good morning, Frau Meyer," he replied warmly. "Allow me to introduce Lady Rothwell, who is visiting from the Imperial Court to examine our botanical collection." The woman curtsied respectfully to Helena. "An honor, my lady. Though if it's flowers you're interested in, you should visit my shop. I may not have exotic specimens, but no one in the valley grows finer roses." "I would be delighted," Helena replied, charmed by the woman's forthright manner. "Though I fear they may be past their best at this season." "Ah, but I have drawings of my summer varieties," Frau Meyer countered. "And the last of the autumn blooms still hold their own." Robert smiled. "We'll certainly stop by before returning to the manor, Frau Meyer. But first I promised Lady Rothwell a visit to the church and Herr Bauer's bookshop." As they continued through the village, Helena was struck by the genuine affection evident between Robert and the local people. This was no performative noblesse oblige but a relationship built on years of mutual respect. When they entered the small bookshop, the proprietor greeted Robert like an old friend rather than a patron. "My father always said a community's heart could be judged by its church and its bookshop," Robert explained as they browsed the surprisingly well-stocked shelves. "Herr Bauer keeps us connected to the wider world of ideas." Helena ran her fingers along the spines of several scientific volumes. He has an impressive natural philosophy section. The Count ensures it stays that way, said Herr Bauer, approaching with a small package. He subsidized my more scholarly acquisitions, knowing they might not otherwise sell in a village this size. He handed the package to Robert. The botanical monograph you ordered from Leipzig has arrived, Your Excellency. Perfect timing, Robert replied, accepting it with evident pleasure. He turned to Helena. This is for you, actually. I ordered it when we first began corresponding about the American specimens. Helena accepted the package with surprise. Robert, you shouldn't have, consider it a professional courtesy, he said, though his eyes conveyed a deeper meaning. One botanist to another. The small gesture, thoughtful, personal, relevant to her interests rather than merely ornamental, affected Helena more deeply than any grand romantic gesture could have. This man saw her, truly saw her, and valued what he saw. They spent another hour in the village, visiting the medieval church with its unexpected botanical carvings and stopping at Frau Meyer's shop to admire her illustrated catalogue of roses. Throughout, Robert treated Helena with a careful balance of respect and evident affection that drew curious but not disapproving looks from the villagers they encountered. As they drove back to the manor for their final evening together, Helena felt a curious sense of peace settling over her. The decision that had seemed so impossible the night before now appeared, if not easy, then at least clear. Thank you for today, she said as the carriage wound its way up the hillside. For showing me your world. Robert's gaze was steady. It could be your world too, Helena. She looked out at the autumn landscape, golden in the late afternoon light. I know, she replied softly. Dinner that night was a quiet affair, with the Countess steering conversation toward neutral topics, perhaps sensing the undercurrents between her son and their guest. When she excused herself early, claiming fatigue, neither Robert nor Helena protested too strongly. They retreated to the library, where a fire had been lit against the autumn chill. For a long moment, they stood in silence before the flames, the decision point they had both anticipated finally at hand. Tomorrow you return to Vienna, Robert said at last. Yes. Helena turned to face him. The princess expects me for the diplomatic reception preparations. He nodded, his expression carefully neutral. And have you decided? About us? Helena took a deep breath. I have. But before I tell you, I need to know exactly what you're proposing, Robert. No diplomatic language, no carefully chosen words. Just the truth. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. I'm proposing marriage, Helena. A life together, here at Aschenberg. I'm asking you to become my wife, my partner in everything that matters. The directness of it, the simplicity after months of veiled correspondence and hidden meanings, nearly took her breath away. There would be scandal, she said, needing him to understand fully what he was embracing. The court would talk. Your peers might shun you. The princess would certainly dismiss me, possibly without references. I know, he acknowledged. I've considered all of that. It matters less than you might think. Easy to say from your position, she countered. Your life would continue much as before. Would it? He raised an eyebrow. You underestimate the power of aristocratic disapproval, Helena. But more importantly, you underestimate how empty that life has felt until now. Until you. She wanted desperately to believe him. And if I say yes? What then? Then I speak to the princess formally, requesting permission to court you. She may refuse, of course, but that would only accelerate our timeline, not change the outcome. His mouth quirked in a half-smile. I suspect she will be more concerned with appearances than with actually keeping you in her service once she understands the situation. Helena couldn't argue with his assessment of Sophia's character. The princess would be far more worried about seeming to have lost a suitor than actually losing a lady-in-waiting, however valued. And after that, she pressed. After the princess dismisses me and society registers its disapproval. After that, we marry, he said simply. Here, at Aschenberg, with whatever guests are brave enough to attend. We build a life around what matters to us both, the estate, the botanical collection, perhaps a scientific salon in Vienna during the winter season. His voice softened. Children, if we're so blessed. A family of our own. The vision he painted was so achingly appealing that Helena felt tears pricking at her eyes. You make it sound so simple. Not simple, he corrected gently. But worthwhile. Helena looked into the fire, gathering her courage. When she turned back to him, her decision was written in her eyes. Yes, she said quietly but firmly. Yes to all of it, Robert. The scandal, the uncertainty, the life at Aschenberg. Yes to becoming your wife. The joy that transformed his face was answer enough, but his words confirmed it. You've made me the happiest of men, Helena. He took her hand and raised it to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm that conveyed more emotion than any elaborate declaration. Helena felt the last of her reservations dissolve under the certainty of his touch. We'll face whatever comes together, she promised. Together, he echoed. That's all that matters in the end. Vienna, November 1897. The princess's private parlor blazed with afternoon sunlight as Helena finished reading the latest diplomatic correspondence aloud. 2 weeks had passed since her return from Aschenberg, 2 weeks of careful preparation and growing resolve. That will be all for now, Sophia said, arranging her skirts fastidiously. Though I expect we'll receive further communication from the British ambassador before tomorrow's reception. Yes, Your Highness. Helena gathered the letters, her movements deliberate and calm despite her racing heart. The moment she had been preparing for had arrived. If I may, there is a personal matter I would like to discuss with you. The princess glanced up, mild curiosity in her expression. Oh? What is it, Helena? I have received an offer of marriage. The words hung in the air between them, simple yet transformative. Sophia's eyebrows rose. Marriage? To whom? Helena met her gaze steadily. To Count Robert Aschenberg. For a moment, the princess's face remained perfectly blank. Then understanding dawned, followed swiftly by disbelief. Count Aschenberg has proposed to you? My lady-in-waiting. Yes, Your Highness. Sophia stood abruptly, pacing to the window and back. This is absurd. Completely absurd. She turned to Helena with narrowed eyes. When did this happen? How long has this been going on behind my back? It began with our correspondence about botanical specimens, Helena explained, maintaining her composure. During my visit to his estate, the Count made his intentions clear. He wishes to marry me, with Your Highness's blessing if possible. My blessing? Sophia laughed incredulously. You expect me to bless this inappropriate attachment? The Count is one of Vienna's most eligible noblemen. You are a lady-in-waiting, Helena. The daughter of a professor, not an aristocrat. I am aware of the disparity in our positions, Helena acknowledged. As is Count Aschenberg. The princess studied her face, realization slowly dawning. The letters, she said slowly. All those letters you wrote in my name. Her eyes widened. He never was writing to me, was he? It was you he wanted all along. Helena hesitated, then decided that complete honesty was the only path forward. The first letter was addressed to me, Your Highness. There was no misdirection. When we assumed it was meant for you, a misunderstanding began that neither of us initially corrected. Sophia sank back into her chair, her expression oscillating between shock and something like grudging admiration. Well played, Helena. I never suspected. Her eyes hardened slightly. Though I don't appreciate being made the fool in this little drama. That was never our intention, Helena assured her quickly. The situation evolved in ways neither of us anticipated. The princess was silent for a long moment, considering. Finally, she sighed dramatically. I suppose there's nothing to be done about it now. The Count has made his choice, however inexplicable I may find it. She fixed Helena with a direct look. You understand, of course, that you cannot remain in my service if you accept this proposal. I understand, Your Highness. And you still wish to accept? Helena took a breath. I do, Your Highness. Sophia's mouth tightened, but she nodded. Very well. I shall inform the mistress of the household that you will be leaving our service to be married. A faint smile touched her lips. I must say, Helena, I didn't think you had such ambition in you. From lady-in-waiting to countess, it's quite a leap. It is not ambition that guides my decision, Your Highness, Helena said quietly. It is affection. Mutual respect. A shared vision for the future. How very romantic, Sophia replied, though without real malice. I suppose I shall have to find another botanical enthusiast to catalogue my collection. She waved her hand dismissively. You may go, Helena. Make the necessary arrangements with the household staff. I shall expect you to remain until after the New Year celebrations. That should give me sufficient time to find a replacement. Thank you, Your Highness. Helena curtsied deeply, recognizing the princess's response for the relative kindness it was. Sophia could have made the situation far more difficult, had she chosen to. As Helena turned to leave, the princess called after her, he must care for you a great deal, to risk the scandal this will cause. Helena paused at the door. I believe he does, Your Highness. Then perhaps he's wiser than I gave him credit for. Sophia picked up her embroidery, signaling the end of the conversation. That will be all, Helena. As she closed the door behind her, Helena felt a weight lift from her shoulders, not just the immediate burden of confession, but the accumulated weight of years lived in service to another's story. For the first time since coming to court, her future stretched before her as her own to author, her own to claim. She had one more letter to write, the most important one of all. Not as the princess's voice, not as a lady-in-waiting performing a duty, but as Helena Rothwell, soon to be Countess Aschenberg, writing to the man who had seen her true self hidden behind her role and loved her for exactly who she was. My dearest Robert, the princess knows everything. As we anticipated, I am to leave her service, though not until after the New Year celebrations. She took the news better than I feared. There was surprise, of course, and a certain wounded pride, but no real anger. 3 months, my love. 3 more months of palace life, and then I come to you, to Aschenberg, to the future we will build together. The time will pass quickly, I'm sure, with all the preparations of the holiday season to occupy the court. I find myself thinking of your mother's roses, dormant now beneath the winter frost but ready to bloom again in spring. Perhaps it's a fitting metaphor for my own transformation, the lady-in-waiting sleeping beneath the snow of court ceremony, waiting for the warmth of a new life to awaken her. Until January, I remain as always *. Yours in earnest *. Helena *.